And the darkness was quiet, it was calm, it was peaceful. And I had just come from this violence, and so it felt very, very comforting to me. And I was curious. I was very curious as to where I was, what's going on.
So, welcome everybody to our channel. Today, I have a very special interview with David Bennett. Welcome, David. I'm delighted to have you on our show.
Thank you, Christine. It's an honor to be here.
David, you had an amazing NDE, and I'd like you to talk about it. But before we get to that, I'd like you to tell us about who you are and who you were before the NDE so we can see the changes in you before and after. Okay? So, who were you? Were you a spiritual person at that time?
Not really. No, no, Christina, I wasn't really that spiritual. I was the chief engineer of a research vessel, and I believed more in facts and things like that. Although I had been exposed in my early childhood, I my family was very dysfunctional. In fact, until I was 14, my mother was a single mom. And so she used to put me from one family to the next to the next. And one family might be a little neglective, another family might be a little abusive. And every time she'd find out, the problems that were going on in these families that she would place me with, she'd move me to another one. So I really had a hard time feeling a sense of family. I didn't feel that anybody was really looking out for me because I was always in these bad situations as a kid. So I was very self-reliant. I was very self-involved. I was trying to look out for myself because I didn't really feel that anybody else was looking out for me. My mother was very distant. She was also a very self-involved person, so I probably learned it from her. So but it served me very well because I became the chief engineer of a research vessel. I had done some time in the military, and I learned how to take care of myself and to look out for myself. But I was an engineer. I was trained as an engineer. That's what I went to school for. And so I saw things pretty much as black and white. I didn't really have a deep spirituality. Some of the families that I had been involved with, they had different religions and different faiths. There were a number of different religions that I was exposed to. But I didn't see where those people were actually practicing what they were talking about in their religion. So I didn't see a purpose behind religion at the time. But I did have some exposure when I lived in Arizona with some Native American families because most of my friends were Native American there, and their grandmothers kind of showed me more of a natural way of living and showed me and tried to, because they saw the dysfunction of my family, and so they tried to try to show me a better way of living life. But in life we have to get on with life. We have to get a career. We need to. So I listened to those grandmothers, but I didn't really, and I kind of filed it away, but I didn't apply it to my life. So
But you had an experience during that time, didn't you?
yes, I did. I had a very spiritual experience where they taught me how to what they called Vision Quest, where you go inward to meet your higher consciousness, your guides, that sort of thing. And I actually did I was successful at the age of 14 and had a Vision Quest that I got to meet what I called Grandfather Mountain. And it was a very I believe it saved my life because I was on a very self-destructive path and until that time, and that kind of helped calm me down quite a bit, quite a bit.
And so you went into, then you grew up and you went to the military. And then what happened to take you to the near death experience?
Yes, after the military, I became a commercial diver and the chief engineer of a research vessel. We did underwater exploration. It was my dream job. It was what I really, really was aspiring to do, and I was very, very proud of achieving that. And in 1983, in March, we were evaluating a new submarine, and while evaluating that submarine, a storm started to come up the coast. And so what we did, we were trying to make it back to the harbor, but the storm overran us, and so we were outside the harbor, and there were 25 to 30-foot seas. I'm not sure what that is in metric, but but the harbor master wouldn't allow our ship to come into port, but we had some design engineers on board that needed to get to the airport, and so the captain, I was the chief engineer, third officer, but the captain, and we didn't have a full crew of shipmates on board, so the captain asked me to accompany one of the mates to bring these people in and then come back. And we were using a rubber Zodiac as a to transport us into the harbor. But when we got
How many people on the boat?
about 5 of us, and we were Um, this was a very powerful little Zodiac. We used to use it to retrieve our submarines and things like that. So it was a very capable craft. The only problem was that we didn't really find the harbor entrance. Because we started out 2 miles offshore, and which is quite a ways, and so we were trying to keep an eye on the harbor buoy, but but in 25 to 30-foot seas, you could only go on top of a wave, run down the trough, and come up on the top of the next wave, and then try to take a bearing on where the harbor is. Well, we lost track of where the harbor was, but the shoreline was lit up. And you got to remember, this is a storm. We're in the middle of a storm, and so it's dark. It's nighttime. So we just decided to go in, land on the beach, and we'll get these people to the harbor some way, and so that they could get transportation to the airport. But we didn't realize it. The storm had blown us quite a ways south of the harbor to an area that is really well known for its surfing competitions, these big breakers, and we drove right off a 25-footer, and we were we were airborne, and we hit the water, and I yelled to the mate to turn us around to head back out to sea because we were in a very dangerous situation. And the next wave came, and it crashed down on top of us, and it folded the Zodiac in half. I was in the bow, and it threw me into the ocean. I was trained as a commercial diver, so I wasn't afraid or anything like that. I just knew I had to protect myself because the wave had pushed me down very, very deep. I could tell by the popping in my ears and everything, and that I would. So I was trying to just protect myself and hang on to my life vest, but I was being tumbled and tossed like a rag doll, and the ferocity of the ocean. I totally lost track of what was up, what was down, because I had been, turned around so many times. And so I just waited for my life vest to bring me up to the surface, but it didn't. And I drowned. And I found myself as soon as I breathed in salt water, I found myself in this absolute darkness.
Let me ask you something. because I've heard other in the stories of people who drowned, and they tell that they were drowning, but their soul or their consciousness went out and they were observing and they did not suffer, because I imagine that drowning is a very painful kind of death. Did you feel, did you suffer, or you were detached?
You know, there was a moment. There was just a split moment, a fraction of of time where I felt the burning of the salt water going down my lungs, but then I immediately snapped out of my body into this absolute darkness. And the darkness was quiet, it was calm, it was peaceful, and I had just come from this violence, and so it felt very very comforting to me. And I was curious. I was very curious as to where I was, what's going on. And I saw a light, and as I saw the light, I felt like I was moving toward it. And as I got closer and the light got larger, I saw that it was many, many, many millions of fragments of light, small, slivers of light, and they were all moving in unison and like almost like a beautiful dance, And they, as I got closer and closer, I started feeling these waves of love, of just being wrapped in this just wonderful embrace of love. And and I was in awe of all these lights, these fragments of light. And when I tried to look at myself, I saw that I was becoming a light. I was becoming a fragment of light myself. As I got closer to these millions upon millions of fragments of light, three of them broke away and they came toward me. And as they came toward me, they were welcoming me home. And I recognized them as family. And not any family that I'd lived this life with, but they felt more like a real family to me than anything I had ever experienced in life. And eventually, a dozen of them, 12 of them, came and greeted me and were welcoming me and just supporting me and loving me. And it was incredible. And I was, I was just so overwhelmed and so overjoyed with meeting my family. And and I call them my soul family because they weren't anyone that I'd lived this life with.
And then did you talk to them?
Well, yeah, well, we communicated, but it wasn't like you and I are talking right now. It was more of, um, I would understand what they wanted from me. They would understand what I was asking, and so there was a communication, but it wasn't like this verbal speech. And also the communication was so much more than what like when we express words, and you interpret those words in your own way. But when we would communicate, I could see or understand their meaning so much more. It was much more expansive. The communication. I mean, there was a depth to it that we just can't experience here, as far as the communication and the way that it was transpired. So I understood we were going to move further into the light, and there was this area within the light where it felt like a giant bubble, a sphere. um, and when went into this area, I started to relive my life. um, and I relived my life from not just my perspective, but from everyone that I'd interacted with, from their perspective. And it was like my consciousness had fragmented into multiple streams of consciousness, and I was able to experience every interaction that I'd ever had with everyone, you know. And my soul family were experiencing it the same way that I was. And that that caused a little concern for me because I was, like I said earlier, I was this self involved kind of person. I was a brash young man and I was very, very self involved. And so some of the things that I did to achieve my success in life, they got to experience. And I was a little ashamed of, the way that I went about getting, moving forward in life. And so, but they didn't judge me. They loved me. They supported me. And I found that incredibly humbling. And and just being, held in this love while I was experiencing all of these events in my life. Well, eventually and it was kind of interesting, Christine, the things that I thought were important weren't necessarily that important in this review of my life. What was important was when I would do something with loving intention. That would create like the largest ripples. And the things that I thought in life that were really important, like becoming chief engineer, that I was very proud of that. It meant very little in the life review. But what really, when I would do something again with loving intention, without looking for any reward or anything like that, but just do something for someone else and do it with love in my heart, that's what created some of the biggest ripples. And so I was just captivated by all this experience. And eventually we reached a point where I couldn't relate it to my life. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually honored to see this preview of my life. And and everything in the life review that I had lived was absolutely crystal clear. But once we crossed that threshold into my potential future, then it was more like a looking down a corridor. And the center part of the corridor was very clear, but the periphery was a little out of focus. And I've come to interpret that as, we have these goals in life that we're trying to strive for, that we have agreed to when we came into this life. But then on the periphery, to get there, we can go a little this way or a little that way, but we'd always be guided back to the center path. And so that gives us free will to live our lives and to be able to, but still try to reach these certain points. And so I got to go down this corridor and I got to see certain events in my future. And then I finally came to a certain point where the light, this millions upon millions of fragments of light, all spoke in unison. And they all said, "This is not your time. You must return." And I rejected that. I said, "No way. I do not want to go back. I know that body is dead. That body it was undesirable for me to return to that body because I had found a family. I had found a family that loves me and was supporting me. And I'd never experienced anything like that in life. And why would I want to go back to life where it's cold and it's hard and it's, so I argued with what I perceived as God. The unity of all these beings, all the souls that ever were and all the souls that ever will be were speaking to me and telling me to return. And I said no. I said no. And the light spoke one more time. And this time it said, "You must return. You have a purpose." That word purpose really just it was immense to me. It vibrated into my being, and captivated by it, but also I understood it because, when we're on the other side, our consciousness is so much greater than what we have available here. It's like we are connected to all the souls that ever were and all the souls that ever will be. And so we have this expanded understanding. And that purpose, I understood it. And with that understanding, I was able to come to accept it. And once I accepted it, that's when I found myself outside my body. The original three soul family members that greeted me, welcomed me home, they were with me. And we were watching my body. It was still being tumbled and tossed in the waves, but some of the wreckage from the zodiac, actually the bow line, had come and wrapped itself around my arm. And I was just watching this in awe because the bitter end of the bow line was tapping my lifeless chest. And I was just trying to figure, how is the enormity of me, because I was this large light being now, how am I going to fit in there in that little dense body, you know? And as I was pondering that, the next wave hit some of the wreckage, and when it did, there was some air in one of the pontoons, and it popped up on the surface. And when it did that, the line tightened around my arm and it yanked my body up. And when it did that, I was able to come up to the surface. And my body got tangled up in a lot of the wreckage, the lines of the zodiac, and my body was being pounded up against this wreckage. And I was outside watching this. And eventually, some of that salt water in my lungs was pushed out by being pounded up against this wreckage. And the soul family gave me a push, and I resonated back into my body. Well, dying is hard, but coming back to life is even more difficult. The my mates, they were still there looking for me.
Nobody died in the accident.
Nobody died in the accident, except me. but but nobody died permanently, and they had all come. Their life vests had brought them up to the surface, and I didn't. I when we come back from one of these experiences, we feel like we're half here and half there, and we have we have a greater awareness for a while that stays, that lingers after the experience. And I had this understanding. I knew that my life vest was defective. It was an old-fashioned World War II, one of the ones that looks like a big orange pillow, and the fiber lining had deteriorated to the point that the salt water was getting into the fiber lining, and the life vest itself was actually what was pulling me down rather than bringing me up. And so once I discarded that life vest, I was able to stay up on the surface, but I was having trouble. But we all came together. They found me, and we all got together, and we had to swim another mile because we'd only come in a mile, and to get to shore and to get to safety.
So you swam to the shore?
Yeah, with a dislocated shoulder.
You said that you were shown your purpose and you understood it. When you came back, did you bring that memory with you? Did you understand your purpose?
Yeah, that was the part that was the hardest for me, because when I came back into my body and in the density of this body, how confining this body feels, the understanding, that greater expansive understanding of my purpose, started slipping away. It started evaporating, to whereas I could, and I was going, purpose, purpose. What was the purpose? I was trying to recall that purpose. And so that started me on a lifelong search of, what was this purpose that I was shown, and trying to come to understand it. It At first, when you first come back, you question whether the experience was real at all. You question, what happened, what was that, and because I was an engineer, and suddenly I could see auras. Suddenly I could see people's light in their eyes. And these things really, I have to say, they frightened me. They freaked me out, and I just kind of wanted my old life back. Um, and I'd never heard of an experience like this, and so I didn't know what to do with it. I tried to share it with my first wife at the time, and it frightened her, and so, and and she had a very bad reaction to me trying to tell her that I had died, and so I felt like I couldn't share it. So I kept it to myself for over 11 years. But and I tried to put it, I tried to forget about it. I wanted to get on with my life, but the experience doesn't really let you do that, because the experience itself is more real than this life. When you come back, it feels like this life is a dream, and that was the reality. And so I tried to put that away. And what I did was I there were some things that I could accept from the experience. One, that I'd had this life review and it showed me so much of who I was as a young, I was in my mid 20s, and I got to see how I living my life in the harsh way that I wasn't the best way. And so, but I could accept that this is who I am right now, and I can be a better person. So I called that acceptance of self, acceptance of where I found myself in life, and that I can work to be a better person. And then the other thing that I took from that life review was tolerance, because prior to my life, I really didn't have tolerance for anyone. I had my what I was going to do, and I had my path set for me, but and I didn't really tolerate anyone that got in my way. So, or didn't believe the way that I believed. But in the life review, I got to see that, many times we have people that cross our paths that have different beliefs and make different choices in life. And I got to see that, that's their life. And so I learned tolerance, that, that's their life, their choices in their life. And I don't have to own their choices. I have my own choices in life. And so that really taught me to be more tolerant, that, people are going to cross our paths all the time, and we may not necessarily agree with their choices, but that's fine. That's their life, their choices. So acceptance of myself, tolerance of others, these were these were big for me, because I wasn't that way before the experience. And the other thing that I really learned was that many times in life we come across things that really our heart just really sings out to, that situations and ideals and things like that that really make our hearts happy. And I call those personal truths, because they they really propel us forward in an empowering way. And so, with acceptance, tolerance, and truth, that kind of became my mantra. That kind of became my guiding ideal in life, and it continues to this day. I use that as an ideal to strive for. I know I'm never going to achieve it, because I'm human. I'm fallible. We all stumble all the time, but I
That's acceptance of yourself.
yes, yes. And so I hold those ideals, to try to strive for in life. And they serve me, and that served me well as well. I was able to be a better person and to live a better life. Um, I had more spiritual experiences, and those additional spiritual experiences kept building one on the other, and eventually I started to share my experience, and I met some people that other experiencers, other people who had near-death experiences, and I saw how, we're normal people. It's just we've had extraordinary experiences, and they transform our lives, and they transform our lives for the better. I I started I changed my life. I quit my life at sea, and I became a manager, assistant director, in a dialysis program and for a hospital.
Let me ask you something. This serving, this need to serve, was that linked to your purpose?
It was in a lot of ways, and many experiencers feel this. I'm not alone with this. When you come back, you feel this urge, this drive to be more of service. It's very common. Not all experiencers, but it's very common. Many experiencers get this feeling that they want to be more of service, that of humanity. And when I was working offshore, many times 500 miles offshore or more, I just didn't feel like I was being of service, and so I wanted to do more. And I began working in healthcare, in the healthcare industry. And so, and that, it, because of the first experience, I started having these intuitive knowings. I would know things, and it wasn't anything that I had lived in life or learned in school. And so I didn't know where it came from, and so I would try I would see how reliable, how veridical this information is. At first, it was just I would just know. I would just have a knowing. I would understand. After another spiritual experience that I had, then I started to hear, and I started to have visions, and I started to, so it started coming to me more in a spoken type of communication. And to this day, I still communicate, and I've come to learn that I'm communicating with that soul family that greeted me, that they're my guides in this life, and that they're helping me, and they guide me quite a bit, and so I use that spiritual communication um, frequently, a lot. I use it to gauge my life, like when I'm going to make a decision, I think back to that experience and how is the best way to navigate my future, that sort of thing. So it's very helpful, very helpful. But at first, I didn't trust it. It took a while to get familiar with it and get to the point that, and sometimes, when you receive a vision, it's not always clear, and you have to interpret it, and you have to learn how to interpret the vision, and so that took time. That took time for me to be comfortable with. But eventually I became very comfortable with it.
Okay, so you were in a hospital, working in a hospital?
Yes. Yep. And that's when I had another experience that was very pivotal in my life. And that was when I my my spine collapsed because I had lung cancer that had metastasized into my spine, and it ate away 2.5 bones of my thoracic, and the tumor could no longer support the weight of my spine, and my spine collapsed. And I was in my office at the time when that happened, and I walked up to the emergency department so that they could evaluate what was going on because I was in pain. I mean, it was like I called it, all I could see was this red haze of pain. And, and they evaluated me and found that I had stage 4 lung cancer that had, metastasized into my spine. And they weren't going to treat me because it was so severe. They did further tests. They found I had lesions in my hip, my brain, my kidneys, and they prescribed morphine, and Percocet, and were going to allow me to try to be comfortable because they figured I only had weeks to live, and they were just going to allow me to expire. But one of the things I'd seen in my life review was that I was going to have cancer. And so when this presented itself, I recognized it and I saw it. I knew what it was. And I also knew I was going to live beyond it. So when they said, no, we're not going to treat you, I said, no, you are going to treat me. And I picked some doctors that were willing to treat me. And we, and the neat thing was, I had spiritual guidance to help me. And so I used traditional medicine and holistic medicine to come together to balance out the treatment. And I was very fortunate. It was not easy. I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. It was very painful. I was living with a collapsed spine, and lung cancer treatments. This is back in 2000. Were very, it was chemo and radiation, and it was not. It was very hard. It was very hard.
And can I ask you, what other treatments did you do in the holistic field?
Yeah. There's a few things. I used a Essiac tea, which is an herbal tea, right? In fact, President Kennedy used it for his cancer. And Essiac tea, I would drink that twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, and I still drink that to this day. I continue to use Essiac tea. Also, there was a supplement that helped your digestive system, because with the traditional medicine, you're it's very difficult to eat. It's very difficult, to digest food and to metabolize food. So I took this other supplement it was called Propax. It's still available today. It was a series of foods and enzymes that would help your digestive system to get the nutrition that you needed and it was a holistic approach.
Yeah, and did you make any changes to your diet?
Well, you kind of have to, because during the treatment, it was very difficult to eat. Period, because everything, it just you have a hard time digesting food. But afterwards, yes, and I changed my diet drastically afterwards to be a little more raw foods. And remember, I was also, I still had a collapsed spine, so I was trying to do everything I could to be more anti-inflammatory and to reduce, that as much as possible, because I refused to take the pain medicine. So I learned how to control my pain through mindfulness. So that's another kind of holistic approach that I use, rather than taking all these pharmaceuticals that were, they didn't work well with my body. I was very sensitive. That's another thing that happens to a lot of experiencers, is you become really sensitive to medication. It's very common amongst experiencers. So I wanted to get off the pain medicines. And so I learned how to be mindful, to set the pain kind of aside. It was still there, but I could set it aside with mindfulness, and then I would be able to, live my life and go about my life. Eventually, I had 3 additional surgeries to correct my spine, and so I live right now. I have titanium construct to they had to rebuild my spine with titanium once they realized that the cancer was gone. Of course, it took 6 months to uh, get rid of the cancer.
And that was very fast.
It was very fast, and the doctors were very surprised. The doctors were very surprised, and they wanted to continue the treatments, and I told them, no, we don't need to continue the treatment. The cancer is gone, and that I'll maintain it from there. And they respected, because they knew me. They respected my decision. The thing that they said to me was, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. I still see my doctors once a year. They expect it to come back. I don't, but that's their reality, not my reality. And I feel that that's very important. I believe that another approach that I took right from the very beginning was because I'd seen in my life review that I was going to live beyond it, I started visualizing my life beyond the cancer. And I think that that's very powerful, because it affects your attitude. It affects your immune system to believe that you are more powerful than um, this disease or this modality, this obstacle that you're facing. Your attitude helps your body to, when you have a positive attitude, it helps your immune system, and it helps everything to be more effective in fighting the infection and everything that you're dealing with.
As a naturopath, I always tell my patients to listen to your intuition. What's my way? What's my route? And I think you don't have to have an NDE to tap into your intuition, right?
Yeah, exactly. Christina, when I share what I used, I like to caution people that worked for me. It may not necessarily work for everyone, yeah, and I tell people to listen, to tune in, and Christine, I'm sure as a naturopath that you see this all the time, that when you eat something, or when you ingest something, you'll say your body tells you, oh, that is what I needed. Oh, that feels good. Okay. And you try something else, and it's like, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't feel good. And so when we look at our guidance, we can take it very simply. We can see, what is good for me, what feels right, and what doesn't. We all have that ability to be able to judge what is working for me and what isn't. The problem is we don't listen. We don't take the time to tune into ourselves to feel that. But when we do, then we're using our guidance, then we're using that higher functioning part of ourselves that is a part of our divine nature.
Our higher consciousness, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, so now you're cancer free for how many years?
Since 2000, so yeah, 24 years.
24 years. Okay.
But but I'm very, very focused on, but and spirit, God, has given me things to do. And this is where the purpose revealed itself really more in my life, is that now I get to do what I really am meant to do, because I've had the experiences. I've had the near death experiences. I've had many spiritual experiences. I've had this life altering cancer. Eventually, I had surgeries to correct my spine so that I could start, living a normal life again. But it took a long time. There was a long recovery. But now I'm yes, I'm disabled, but I choose to live my life. I don't, I may be disabled, but I choose to live my life. And so I can do things now. I do it mostly online, but and the healing that I learned, because I also used a lot of energetic healing. I call it white light energy healing. It was spirit showed me how to do it while I was going through my cancer. And then after I recovered, some of my friends were saying, Dave, you use that white light energy on yourself. Could you do that for others? And so now I do that for other people. Um, and not only that, but I also, that mindfulness that I taught myself taught me to live a more contemplative lifestyle and to pay attention to spirit's communication. And so I podcast every once a week, I give a little aspect about spiritual living and how to live contemplatively, to be tuned into your higher consciousness and to live your life that way.
Yeah, I'll put the link of your. Do you have a site, a website?
Yeah, yes, I have a website which is Dharma Talks. You can see some of my YouTube videos on contemplative living there, or you can go right to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. That works too.
Okay, I'll put the links below. Um, so you wrote a book also, right?
I've written a couple books. The one that is very popular is Voyage of Purpose, and it talks about my my life in the near-death experience, but also how I learned to live with it, and how I learned, and how there's so much to grow in life when we try to live a spiritual path. And so, yes, it talks about my near death experience, but it also then talks about how to integrate the experience, these spiritual experiences that we have. You don't have to die to have a spiritual experience. Many people have spiritually transformative experiences, but then, they don't know what to do with it. And I saw a study that was done. It was done quite a while ago, but it showed that um, more than half of people have had some form of spiritually transformative experience. Yet nobody talks about it. Nobody is trying to show people how to live with that experience, or to bring that experience into your life so that it becomes more rewarding, more empowering. That sort of thing. So that's kind of what my purpose is now, I believe, is to work on that, and that's what the book is about.
And this book, was it translated into Portuguese or Spanish?
Spanish. It was translated into Spanish. I can give you the link to that, if that would be helpful.
I guess it would be useful for our audience. Okay, so we're getting to the end. I'd like to ask you something. Uh, what would you say for people today? We're we're facing a very hard moment. Here in Brazil, we had floods in the south, very, very hard, difficult situation, and wars around the world. What would you say to give hope to people to face this moment we're living?
Well, I believe that we need to come together. We need to come together as a humanity to help one another during times of crisis, but also to help start moving in a direction to work with Mother Nature, to work with Gaia. This is our home. This is our planet. We need to start caring for it, nurturing it, and we need to come together to do that. We can't be these separate individuals forging a life. We have to come together in community globally in order to do that. And in order to do that, then we have to learn how to get along with each other. We have to be tolerant, right? Um, that's a big lesson for all of us. But it's not hard to do. We start with ourselves. We have to really start with ourselves, because we have the ability to communicate with our higher consciousness. It's waiting patiently there for all of us. But and I've seen some future. I have seen some future, and I've seen that there's, a lot of hardship. But when we come together, we can overcome, and we can start to move more in a positive. But we have to make the effort. We have to make the effort to connect with our higher consciousness, and then start to reach out to other people so that we can work together and we can move together. We see it all the time. The problem is a lot of times, I don't. News media here in the United States likes to show us all the negative stuff that's happening, but we don't get to see the positive. But there's a lot of positive out there. When people come together, you get to see how we work together to overcome problems and overcome obstacles and things like that.
we've seen that with this flood in the south of Brazil, the whole country got together to send food and to rescue people, rescue animals. So it was such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I'm following you, and I'll get links down below for people. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you for having me, Christina. This was great.